Officer Jack Holden wasn't expecting much from his morning patrol along the abandoned tracks outside Maplewood. But as dawn broke, a low, desperate whimper echoed beneath the rusted rails, just loud enough to pierce the quiet. What he found nearly stopped his heart. 3 full-grown German shepherds, bound and muzzled, left to die in the path of an oncoming freight train. With seconds to spare, Jack risked everything and somehow saved them all. But who would do such a thing? What darkness drives someone to such cruelty, and why? And if Jack hadn't been there in that fleeting moment, what would the world have lost when the train thundered through? This is a story that might shatter you, yet show you how hope survives even on the coldest morning. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Let's see where our Maplewood miracle reaches. October in Maplewood, Missouri, had a way of making the world feel paused between breaths. The air was cold, wet, and alive with fog, as if the sky itself wanted to linger just a moment longer before the day began. Maplewood was a small town pressed between old forests and the winding Blackwater River, where the morning mist hid the railroad tracks that snaked away into nowhere. Most days, those rails were nothing more than a boundary between the living and the forgotten. Officer Jack Holden steered his patrol car along the deserted road that paralleled the tracks. The dashboard clock blinked 6:17 a.m. Jack, 42, looked every bit the sturdy small-town cop, broad-shouldered, just a little thick around the middle, his brown hair going silver at the edges. Years in St. Louis had given his eyes a quiet vigilance, but small-town life had softened the lines of worry on his face. He wore his badge pinned carefully, his navy uniform pressed, but his boots and hands bore the scuffs of someone who wasn't afraid to get dirty. Jack liked the silence these early hours offered, a thin gray light, the scent of wood smoke drifting from chimneys, the gentle tap of cold rain on the windshield. Since the divorce, he'd learned to appreciate moments where he could just be, a man in a truck, part of the quiet, not apart from it. He reached the old trestle bridge just as the fog thickened, the rails ahead almost invisible in the haze. That's when he noticed a flicker of movement in the sky. Above him, a drone buzzed and dipped, whirring along the path of the tracks. Jack recognized it immediately. Raymond Parker's handiwork. Raymond was Maplewood's tech wizard, the kind of 30-year-old who wore plaid shirts, thick glasses, and carried at least 3 batteries in his backpack, just in case. His love for gadgets was second only to his love for stories, and he had a habit of live-streaming the mundane corners of Maplewood, somehow making them feel like the edge of the world. Jack gave a brief wave toward the buzzing drone before stepping out of his cruiser. The cold hit his face, sharp and raw. He drew in a lungful of damp air, the taste of earth and dying leaves heavy on his tongue. Suddenly, a sound cut through the fog. A muffled, trembling whimper, low and unnatural, almost lost beneath the hush. Jack's breath caught. He stood still, listening. Another whimper, this one sharper, followed by a choked, desperate yelp. The hairs on his neck rose. He moved quickly, boots slipping on the wet grass as he scrambled down the embankment. The tracks were slick with rain, iron rails cold beneath his gloved hand as he crouched low, peering into the mist. There, tangled among the weeds and stones right on the rails, he saw them. 3 German shepherds. Not puppies, but battered, battle-scarred adults, big, powerful, and trembling. Their fur was filthy, tangled with burrs and bits of rope, patchy in places from old wounds. He could see raw spots where the skin had been rubbed bare by restraints. Blood crusted the corner of one dog's mouth. Another's ear was torn at the tip, ragged and pink. Their paws were cut, one limped painfully, and all 3 had eyes that glinted wild and gold in the gloom. The largest, a black and tan male with an old scar down his right flank, tried to wedge himself between Jack and the other 2. He growled, not in aggression, but a warning, a desperate attempt to protect his companions, even as his body shook. Jack crouched, hands open, speaking softly. "Hey, easy now. I'm not here to hurt you." The second, gray and lean, bore a latticework of scars along his chest and shoulder. His gaze was sharper, the yellow flecks in his eyes fierce but pleading. He shifted, almost as if bracing for another blow, but when Jack's voice remained gentle, he only whimpered and tried to move closer to the 3rd dog. The last, a deep-chested sable with muddy paws, was younger but no less battered. He looked up at Jack with wide, haunted eyes, exhaustion and fear warring with a faint spark of hope. All three were trussed cruelly, rope wound around legs and muzzles, cutting into skin, leaving deep red impressions. None wore a collar. There was nothing to show they'd ever been loved. A horn sounded in the distance. Jack's heart jumped as the low rumble of a freight train vibrated along the rails. He scrambled for his pocket knife, hands fumbling in panic as he checked the train's approach. He cut at the knots on the sable dog first, the rope sticky with old blood, then moved to the gray, then the black and tan. The dogs flinched but did not bite. The train's lights cut through the fog, closer now. Jack barely got the last loop free before yelling, "Come on!" and grabbing the scruff of the black and tan, pulling all three dogs off the rails just as the train shrieked past, horn blaring, wind and thunder screaming. The world went still. Jack was sprawled in the grass, three battered dogs trembling around him, the rails humming from the passing train. Jack felt his own hands shaking. He quickly checked the dogs for injuries. The black and tan's old scar was reopened, blood trickling along his flank. The gray limped, his back paw nearly useless, and the sable's ribs heaved with every shallow breath. Jack reached out, letting the dogs smell his hand. They watched him, wary but beaten, not running, not yet trusting. "You're safe," he whispered. "I've got you." Above them, the drone hovered, catching every second the dogs, the chaos, the man kneeling in the mud to shield creatures the world had thrown away. Jack tried to coax the dogs toward his cruiser. The sable hesitated, tail low, as if remembering old commands from a world before pain. Jack knelt, feeling a wave of anger and pity. That's when he noticed something. A faint, blurred mark just behind the gray dog's ear. He brushed back the filthy fur and saw it, a string of faded blue digits, tattooed long ago, almost invisible against the pale skin. He checked the other two and found similar markings, different numbers, but all in the same place. Jack's mind raced. Dogs don't get tattoos unless someone is claiming them, tracking them. These weren't strays. They were owned, used, and thrown away. Gently, Jack lifted the black and tan's face, searching for some glimmer of identity. He didn't have a name, just a world of pain in his eyes and a spark of defiance that refused to die. "You're a fighter," Jack murmured. "All of you are. But not anymore. You're done fighting for them. If you'll have it, you can fight for yourselves now. With me." Something in the dogs' bodies relaxed. The gray pressed his head to Jack's knee. The sable let out a long, shaky sigh. The black and tan licked Jack's hand, once, cautious. Jack helped them into the back of his cruiser, bundling his jacket beneath them. He dialed the local vet, Lisa Carter Short, sharp-eyed, always gentle with animals, and braver than she looked. As he made the call, Jack looked at the three dogs' scars, eyes and all, and promised silently, "I won't let this be the end of your story." He started the engine, the warmth of the heater finally breaking the chill. In the mirror, three pairs of eyes watched him, tired, battered, but alive. Outside, the drone hovered one last time, catching the sunrise breaking over the tracks and the small miracle that had taken place there. And in that quiet, Jack decided, no more numbers, no more pain. These dogs would have names that meant hope, not hurt. But for now, all that mattered was they were safe. Together they headed away from the tracks toward the first day of their new lives. Jack Holden drove through the waking town, the three battered German shepherds nestled awkwardly in the back seat of his patrol car. The dogs were exhausted but alert, their heads lifting at every new sound and scent as Maplewood began to stir. Coffee shops flicking on their neon signs, school buses rumbling past, the aroma of fresh cinnamon rolls escaping Betty's diner. Jack watched them in the rearview mirror. The black and tan with a reopened scar and heavy gaze, the ashen-furred dog with a limp and wary eyes, and the deep-chested sable still panting from shock, all pressed together as if uncertain whether safety had truly come. Pulling into the police station, Jack turned off the ignition and spoke gently. "We're home, boys. As close as you've got right now." Inside, the old building carried the familiar scents of floor polish, old coffee, and the faint, comforting trace of dog hair. Jack had always allowed the town's K-9 units to wander in and out on cold days, and the memory seemed to settle the newcomers a bit. He fetched water, found an old wool blanket, and coaxed the three dogs into a warm corner of the squad room. They hesitated, but, sensing no threat, eased themselves down, curling tightly as Jack called the only person he trusted for this kind of emergency. Dr. Lisa Carter arrived in less than 20 minutes, windblown and purposeful, her battered Jeep screeching into the lot. Lisa was in her mid-30s, petite but with an athletic steadiness, her pale blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and her jeans dusted with the telltale smudges of a veterinarian on call. Her eyes were sharp and kind, framed by laugh lines, and her smile quick, crooked was the sort that made even the most anxious patient relax. Lisa had grown up in Maplewood, the daughter of a cattle farmer who'd lost his herd to a flood and never really recovered. She'd carried the family's stubborn resilience into adulthood, and after a failed stint in Chicago, had returned home, determined never to leave again. She nodded at Jack, set down her well-worn leather bag, and immediately crouched beside the dogs, her hands confident and gentle. "Hey there," she murmured, offering the back of her hand. The sable was first to sniff, then Axel, the black and tan, and finally Smokey, the gray one, who eyed her warily. Lisa took her time, examining each in turn. She murmured observations as she worked. "This ear's been torn before, old injury. See the scabbing along the belly, Jack? That's not fresh. Whoever had them didn't care about infection." Her gloved fingers pressed gently on Axel's neck. "This scar deep, probably from a chain. Nerve damage, maybe. No collar mark. But see this? Rope burn." Axel didn't flinch, but seemed to brace himself for pain that didn't come. Lisa's voice softened further. "Good boy. No more chains, okay? Tank, the sable, was missing a lower canine, an old healed break." Lisa ran a light over his teeth, found several were cracked or worn to nubs. "Looks like he's chewed wire, or maybe gnawed at bars. Someone locked him up for a long time." She found thick calluses on his elbows and paws, the kind only hard floors and restless nights could cause. Smokey's back leg was swollen, an angry purple lump beneath thinning fur. "He's got a fracture here." Probably from a kick, Smokey bared his teeth, but Lisa simply pressed a gentle hand to his shoulder and waited until his breathing slowed. All three dogs bore patchy scars, faded bruises, and wounds not only from humans but from other dogs. Rows of old bite marks, torn ears, deep scratches along ribs and haunches. Lisa frowned. "These aren't strays, Jack. They were forced to fight, probably for money, and probably not the first time. Look here, behind the ear." She parted the fur on Smokey's neck, showing Jack the faint blue tattoo, a string of digits, still visible though blurred with time. Tank and Axel bore the same, different numbers. Some kennels, the illegal ones, marked dogs this way. For tracking bets, Jack felt cold. He crouched, meeting Axel's dark eyes. "You boys have seen hell, haven't you?" The dogs didn't answer, but their silence was enough. At that moment, the glass door creaked open, and a tall, regal woman strode in, her step brisk and unhurried. Connie Marsh, mayor of Maplewood, was a striking figure. Late 50s, proud posture, deep brown skin, her short natural hair dusted with silver. Her suits were always sharp, her voice low but commanding, and her laugh was rare, reserved for moments when she felt it truly mattered. Connie was raised in the South, the child of civil rights activists. She'd seen injustice up close and dedicated her life to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Yet the job of mayor demanded hard choices, and her eyes, tonight, betrayed concern beneath the strength. She approached Jack, her gaze flicking from the battered dogs to the trail of muddy paw prints on the linoleum. "Detective Holden?" she greeted with a nod. "I saw the video. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters, animal rights people, everyone wants a piece of Maplewood's miracle." Her smile was brief, but her words had an edge. "You did the right thing. But Jack, we're 3 weeks from Election Day. This could be very good or very bad for our little town." She lowered her voice. "Just make sure your investigation doesn't end up hurting us all." "The city's reputation is on the line," Jack bristled but kept his voice level. "My priority's these dogs, Connie." And finding whoever put them there, Connie studied him, then nodded. "I expected nothing less." With a brief, warm look at Lisa and a soft word for the dogs, she departed as swiftly as she came, the scent of citrus cologne lingering. As the room settled, Lisa finished cleaning wounds and setting Smokey's injured leg in a soft splint. She wrote prescriptions for antibiotics and painkillers, leaving instructions taped to the fridge. "They need rest. Watch for infection. Call me if anything changes." Jack thanked her, offered coffee, but Lisa just grinned and waved him off, already late for her morning rounds. The squad room was still, the only sounds the gentle snoring of Tank and the distant purr of the heater. Jack jotted down notes for his report, mind spinning with the new evidence. Scars, bite marks, tattoos, all pointing to an underground dogfighting ring. The morning sun had barely warmed the windows when another small commotion arose. From the hallway came the rolling sound of a mop bucket and the slap of wet boots. Entering was a lanky young man in coveralls, early 20s, skin pale, freckles across his nose, and a mop of vivid ginger hair poking from beneath a faded Cardinals cap. His name tag read Ricky. Ricky was one of the town's custodians, known for his nervous energy and the habit of humming country tunes as he worked. As Ricky passed the dogs, Smokey's hackles rose. He let out a guttural, sharp growl, baring his teeth, body tensed as if ready to bolt or bite. Ricky froze, startled. "Whoa, hey, easy fella," he stammered, backing away with wide eyes. Axel and Tank watched, alert but silent. Jack stepped between Ricky and Smokey, calming both. "He's had a rough night, Rick. Let's give them space." Ricky nodded, glancing over his shoulder as he made a hasty exit, the mop bucket sloshing behind him. Jack knelt beside Smokey, soothing him with gentle words. "You're safe. No one's going to hurt you here." Smokey shuddered, then settled, pressing into Jack's hand. Jack couldn't shake the feeling. Smokey's reaction wasn't just fear, but recognition, as if the sight or scent of Ricky had unlocked some dark memory. With the station quiet again, Jack leaned back in his chair, watching the dogs rest, and made a silent vow. He would not let this case slip into the cracks. Someone in Maplewood or beyond had built a business on pain and fear. It ended now. The first rays of real sunlight slipped through the blinds, warming the faces of 3 sleeping dogs and 1 determined police officer, each marked by old wounds, all hoping for something like justice at last. By noon, the Maplewood police station was beset by a steady current of noise and curiosity. The rescue video, caught so vividly by Raymond Parker's drone, had already racked up tens of thousands of views. The local news was first to call, then a regional cable outlet, and by lunchtime, Jack's inbox was flooded with requests for interviews and statements. The drone footage was sharp and heart-stopping. Jack dragging 3 battered German shepherds off the rails, the blur of the freight train, the frantic scramble for safety. Strangers from as far as Seattle and Boston commented with outrage, tears, and offers to help. Outside, a pair of TV vans parked beneath the leafless sycamores, their antennae craning skyward. One young reporter, Olivia Chen Petit, Asian American, her dark hair twisted in a professional chignon, voice determined but kind, waited patiently on the steps, notebook in hand, asking each officer who entered about the dogs. Her gentle persistence and respectful tone made her stand out from the more aggressive crews. Jack, glancing through a side window, noted her diligence with a kind of respect. He didn't have time for interviews just yet. The station's front desk phone rang so frequently that Deputy Carl Bishop, an easygoing black man in his late 30s, with an infectious laugh and a fondness for homemade chili, finally taped a handwritten sign on the glass. "No, the dogs are not up for adoption. Yes, they are safe." Jack appreciated Carl's patience. Carl was the rare sort who could disarm a heated room just by walking into it, tall and broad-shouldered, always ready with a joke. Through the day, Jack kept a close watch on the 3 dogs. They stuck together, moving as a small pack from the squad room to a quieter back office he'd converted into a makeshift kennel. He gave them his old army blanket, bowls of water, and let the October sun stream in through a cracked window. He noted every oddity, the raw rope scars on their necks, the digits still visible as tattoos behind their ears, and the way each dog's claws were ground down, as if they'd been running on rough cement or pacing in a small cage. Sometimes they would twitch in their sleep, paws moving as if running from nightmares. More than once, Jack caught himself staring at their faces, trying to imagine the lives they'd survived. In the early afternoon, a silver Prius with Oregon plates pulled up. From it emerged a tall, slender woman in her 40s, wearing a navy blue coat and glasses perched on her nose. She was accompanied by a wiry, energetic man of about 60, whose tan vest bore the bright green logo of Hope for Paws, a national animal welfare nonprofit. The woman introduced herself as Tessa Walker, the Missouri regional director, her handshake firm and her smile steady. Her hair was shoulder-length and silvering at the temples, her manner businesslike but sincere. She spoke with obvious concern, her words careful. "Officer Holden, we heard about the rescue. We'd like to offer full medical care, a foster program, and eventual placement for the dogs. Our shelters are open." Jack thanked her but kept his voice gentle but firm. "For now, they're evidence. And if it's all right, I'd like to keep them close. This case is bigger than we thought." Tessa understood, though disappointment flickered in her eyes. She gave the dogs a soft smile and handed Jack her card, promising her organization would be there if he changed his mind. Inside, Lisa Carter had not stopped working. Earlier that morning, after finishing basic treatment, she'd plucked several tufts of fur from Smokey, choosing the gray dog for his obvious injuries and strange agitation, and carefully sealed them in a test tube. Lisa's network of veterinary friends included a pathologist in St. Louis, a quietly brilliant black woman named Dr. Clarissa Hughes, whose career had been shaped by growing up on a horse farm plagued by neglectful breeders. Clarissa was known for her methodical calm and her habit of working late, long after everyone else had gone home. Lisa sent a message. "Urgent, suspected forced fighting, see attached sample." By mid-afternoon, Clarissa replied. Her findings were chilling. Smokey's fur carried traces of methylxanthine and amphetamine stimulants, sometimes used by illegal dogfighting rings to make animals more aggressive and ignore pain. Lisa's hands shook as she read the results aloud to Jack. The dogs had not only been brutalized, they had been drugged. Jack felt the anger rising in his chest, icy and sharp. He made a short, pointed statement to the press. "We believe these dogs are the victims of organized cruelty and illegal gambling. This investigation will not stop until those responsible are brought to justice." His words, carried by Olivia's evening broadcast, lit up the state. For every message of support, though, there were others less friendly. Late in the day, Carl handed Jack a plain white envelope, left anonymously on the front desk. The handwriting was blocky, smudged with what looked like oil. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "If you want to live in peace, stay out of other people's business." The next train might not stop. Carl's lips thinned as he read over Jack's shoulder. "We got our first threat." Jack folded the paper, his jaw tight. "I've been threatened before. I'm not backing down." That night, the station quieted, and Jack drove home beneath a moonless sky. As he pulled onto the narrow street behind his apartment, headlights flashed in his rear view. A dark sedan tailed him through 2 turns, lights flicking on and off before vanishing into a side alley. Jack memorized the partial license plate, the silhouette of the driver, a man with a ball cap and a thick neck, face lost in shadow. He parked his car carefully, hand on his radio. No sudden moves, just vigilance, born from years of city work. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, Raymond Parker had problems of his own. He returned to his small bungalow, a cozy, cluttered space filled with camera parts and vintage vinyls, only to discover something odd. His security camera, which automatically uploaded all footage to his cloud drive, had gone offline just after his drone rescue video started to go viral. The app on his phone showed the error. Unauthorized access. Remote reboot. Raymond frowned. He wasn't prone to paranoia, but years of tech tinkering had made him cautious. He called his internet provider and left a message with the Maplewood PD tech officer, a young woman named Samira Patel Short, quick-witted, with an uncanny knack for breaking codes and a fondness for brightly colored scarves. Samira promised to look into it. That night, unable to sleep, Jack sat by the window with a mug of black coffee, watching the quiet street and the slow swirl of autumn leaves. In the next room, the 3 dogs slept close together, Tank's head resting across Axel's side, Smokey twitching through uneasy dreams. Jack studied the scars on their bodies, the way their ears flicked at every sound. He took out a notebook and started mapping every clue, the faded tattoos, the deep rope burns, the way Smokey had reacted to the red-haired custodian, and now the drugs found in his system. Pieces of a bigger, uglier puzzle. He checked his phone for the 10th time. No new threats, no new messages, except a stream of supportive comments from strangers who'd watched the rescue video, and one from Lisa. "I'll come by in the morning to check their wounds. Get some rest, Jack. They trust you." As the first light crept across the floorboards, Jack felt both exhausted and more determined than ever. Someone in Maplewood had secrets to hide, and they'd just made a very public enemy. The wind had picked up in Maplewood, sweeping dry leaves across the station lot and rattling the old glass in Jack Holden's office windows. The dogs, a little healthier and more relaxed after days of steady meals and kindness, lay sprawled on their worn blanket in the corner of the office. Axel, the black and tan, kept one eye open as if he could never fully surrender to rest, while Tank, the big sable, stretched out and snored softly, his huge paws twitching. Smokey, the gray-furred shepherd, sat near Jack's feet, always half-watchful, always close. The day after receiving the anonymous threat and noticing the strange car tailing him, Jack's mind was restless. The investigation's slow grind warred with urgency in his bones. He had to find out where these dogs had come from and what was still threatening them. Jack sat at his battered desk with a mug of burnt station coffee and the police database flickering on his screen. He reviewed every clue: the scars, the tattoos, the way their claws had been ground down, the fact that all 3 dogs responded to certain cues with anxiety or aggression. He pulled out a new evidence bag. Inside, the ragged collar he'd found on the tracks beside Smokey, the one with the faded 617 SLV mark, overlooked in the chaos of that first day. There was no name, just that code stamped into the leather. Jack entered 617 SLV into every system he had: pet registries, import logs, old case files, and got nothing. It wasn't until he dug through the Department of Agriculture's inspection archives that he saw a hit. 617 SLV had been used as a shipping code in a now-closed animal import facility near Reno, Nevada. The report referenced canine units, multiple breeds, destination, SLV Rescue, Missouri. The date was 18 months old. He kept digging. SLV Rescue, the name ringing hollow with irony, had an address on the edge of a small town an hour south of Maplewood. He found several online reviews, many glowing, but at least 2 years old. More recent chatter was different. 2 anonymous complaints on an animal welfare forum accused SLV Rescue of hiding sick dogs, forging vaccination records, and losing entire shipments of animals. The rescue's listed owner was a man named David Slater, age 51, whose mugshot from a 5-year-old animal neglect case popped up in an archived article. Slater had beaten the charges then for lack of evidence. There were no open warrants, but the reputation was rotten. Jack grabbed his jacket, intending to drive out there immediately, but a text from Lisa stopped him. "Emergency at clinic. Can you come?" Jack hurried across town to Maplewood Veterinary. The clinic, painted a gentle blue, always smelled of antiseptic and fresh hay. Lisa greeted him at the door, still in scrubs, her hair falling out of its ponytail. "Sorry, busy day. I wanted you to see this. Tank had a bad episode." Lisa led Jack into a quiet exam room where Tank was lying on a blanket. The big shepherd was trembling, eyes wide, ears flattened. Lisa explained. Ambulance went by outside. The siren barely started, and Tank went wild barking, lunging at the window, nearly tore out his IV. He bit the leash so hard he cracked a tooth. Lisa knelt, stroking Tank's shoulder. "This isn't normal fear. It's a trigger-conditioned response. Jack, I think someone used ambulance sirens as a cue to train him. My guess? Used him for something violent. Maybe even sent him to attack when he heard that sound." Jack's jaw tightened. He looked at Tank, who was beginning to relax under Lisa's touch. "You're safe now, big guy," Jack murmured. "No more sirens. No more fighting." Back at the station, Jack updated Carl Bishop on the SLV rescue lead. Carl, always calm in a storm, offered to run background checks on Slater and the facility's old staff. "If they're dirty, we'll find something." While they worked, the dogs remained close by, an uneasy pack in a place that only half felt like home. Meanwhile, Raymond Parker had set up his own little operation. Spooked by the hack of his home camera, he borrowed a high-zoom camcorder from his shop and set up watch from his upstairs window. Raymond's room was cluttered tripods, drone parts, an enormous poster of the Mars rover. He spent the afternoon rechecking his router, patching up every bit of his network security, and scanning the rescue video frame by frame for anyone suspicious in the crowd that had gathered by the tracks. It was close to midnight when Raymond saw the van. White, windows tinted, no plates. It crept down Jack's street, its headlights off, rolling to a silent stop across from Jack's driveway. Raymond pressed record. 2 figures stepped out. Both men, one tall and lean, the other short and heavy-set, both in dark hooded jackets. They conferred in hushed tones, one glancing up and down the street. The tall one approached Jack's cruiser, leaned in close, and pulled a small object from his pocket, a thick black marker. With a practiced flick, he scrawled something on the rear bumper. The other man produced a length of red twine, tying it to the side mirror, letting it dangle. Both looked up and down the block before slinking back to the van and driving away. Raymond waited until they were gone, then slipped outside with a flashlight, heart hammering. On Jack's car, the marker left a strange sign, a crude spiral with a slash through it, a symbol he didn't recognize. The red twine felt sticky, like it had been soaked in something. Raymond took photos and hurried home, already composing an email to Jack. Just saw something weird. Check your car in the morning pics attached. Be careful. As dawn approached, Jack sat in his office, piecing together the threads. He sketched the spiral symbol on a notepad, frowning. Lisa's insight about Tank gnawed at him. Conditioned dogs, drugged animals, out-of-state shipping codes, a fake rescue with a violent history, and now, silent warnings scrawled on his car. The circle was tightening, and Jack sensed the threat growing bolder. He rose, walked to the dogs, and sat among them, stroking their battered heads, murmuring reassurance. Axel looked up at him with haunted eyes, and Tank, still nervous, nudged Jack's knee. Smokey sat as ever, a silent shadow. Jack spoke softly, not just to the dogs, but to the room itself. Whatever they did to you, whatever they're still doing out there, it stops now. Midnight settled over Maplewood with a chill so deep it felt almost deliberate, the kind of cold that made even the old trees along Jack Holden Street shiver and creak. The moon was waning, patching the road in uneven silver. Jack's modest house, brick with a faded green door, sat quiet behind a scraggly hedge of holly. Inside, the hush was deceptive. The three rescued shepherds dozed in the front room, each curled in a hollow worn by exhaustion and the uneasy peace of recent days. Jack himself was half awake, feet on the coffee table, a half-read police report splayed open on his chest, the TV flickering low with an old western. The past few days had made him tense, sleep coming only in snatches. He kept his service pistol on the end table within reach. Outside, on the porch, the wind carried a whiff of motor oil and tobacco, a scent Jack registered, half dreaming, before the true alarm came. Axel, the black and tan, rose first, ears pricked, body rigid. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Smokey's tail thumped as he stood, the first sharp bark he'd made since coming to Jack's care. Tank, the biggest, moved to the door, hackles raised, his heavy paws thudding on the floorboards. The sound of a window being forced, an awkward metallic screech, sent adrenaline surging through Jack. He was up in a second, gun drawn, creeping to the hallway with practiced caution. He flicked on the porch light, and in its glow caught movement at the kitchen window, a flash of denim, a pale, narrow face. Jack called out, "Maplewood Police! Leave now and nobody gets hurt." The reply was the crash of glass as a booted foot broke through and three men burst inside. The first, Eddie Bragg, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a bulldog jaw, buzzed blonde hair, and a faded tattoo curling up his neck led the way, wielding a crowbar. Eddie's dark eyes were hard and mean, and his posture reeked of the confidence of someone who'd broken into homes before. Behind him, a wiry man with pitted skin, a jagged scar on his cheek, and nervous, darting eyes, they'd later learn he was called Ray, and a third, round-faced, smaller, hands thick and scarred, known as Buck, followed. All three wore heavy work jackets, boots caked in mud, and gloves. They moved with the quiet urgency of men who did not plan to be seen. Jack fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The crash and crack sent the intruders scattering for cover. Axel lunged, teeth bared, catching Ray's arm before the man could swing his own weapon. There was the snarling, violent music of a true dogfight. Axel's jaws locking, Ray screaming, Tank bowling into Buck and pinning him hard to the ground. Smokey, the most reserved of the trio until now, went after Eddie with surprising speed, clamping onto his pant leg and yanking with a sudden, fierce violence that made Eddie howl and flail. Jack grappled with Ray, managing to wrest the crowbar from his hand, but not before a fist caught him in the jaw, sending his teeth rattling. Buck broke free from Tank and crashed into the coffee table, shattering it, but Tank, undeterred, leapt onto his back and drove him into the carpet with all his weight. Axel, still locked on Ray's arm, finally released as Ray punched him repeatedly, leaving the dog's ear bloodied. Eddie, kicking Smokey away, tried for the back door, but Smokey, shaking, a deep growl building, would not let go. In the chaos, Eddie managed to pull himself loose and hurled a lamp at Jack, narrowly missing him but sending glass everywhere. The fight raged across the living room, chairs upturned, a vase smashed, blood on the hardwood floor from both men and dogs. Finally, seeing that surprise and numbers no longer favored them, the intruders broke for the exit. Ray, nursing a mauled arm, dragged Buck, who limped and cursed, out the shattered window, while Eddie threw one last look of hatred at Jack, eyes wild with something between rage and fear before following. The three disappeared into the night, their boots hammering against the sidewalk. Silence fell as suddenly as the violence had erupted. Axel staggered to Jack's side, panting, blood slicking his muzzle and ear. Tank, trembling, tried to stand but collapsed, his side marked by a deep gash. Smokey limped but wagged his tail, his eyes wide, still burning with the adrenaline of the fight. Jack holstered his pistol and called 911, voice steady even as his hands shook. Officer down home invasion suspects fled on foot, 3 males, possibly armed. Send backup and medical. While waiting for help, he tended to the dogs as best he could, applying pressure to Axel's bleeding ear and using towels to staunch the worst of Tank's wound. His heart thudded, gratitude, rage, and something like awe at what these animals had risked for him. Paramedics and backup arrived, led by Officer Jenny Wu, a tough, quick-moving woman in her late 20s, black hair in a tight braid, her face always set with purpose. Jenny quickly took in the chaos, moving from Jack to the dogs, helping secure the scene, her voice calm and commanding. Paramedics bandaged Jack's jaw and checked the dogs. "These 3 saved your life," Jenny said, kneeling by Axel, her dark eyes softening for just a second. In the wreckage, police found something. A battered old phone, dropped by Buck in the scuffle. The screen was cracked but still working. Jenny slid it into an evidence bag. "Might be something on here." As the house quieted, Jack, adrenaline fading, sat on the porch steps with the dogs. Smokey, for the first time since coming to Maplewood, barked a full-throated, ringing call that echoed through the empty street. He trotted to the back fence and began pawing at the ground. Jenny, curious, followed. Together they found half buried in the dirt, a small gold key, its surface engraved with a tiny spiral. Jack picked it up, feeling the weight of meaning he couldn't yet name. As dawn threatened, Jack's house was a ruin of glass and overturned furniture, but everyone, man and dog, had survived. 2 of his rescuers lay on the floor, battered but safe, their eyes never leaving him. He whispered thanks, promising, as much to himself as to them, that the fight was far from over. The sun was just creeping over the rooftops of Maplewood, painting the battered neighborhood in pale gold, when Jack Holden arrived at the police station with a battered evidence bag. Inside was the phone dropped by one of last night's intruders. Jack's jaw still ached from the fight, and Axel limped beside him, a fresh bandage taped over his ear. Tank moved more slowly than usual, his side stitched and tender, but both dogs insisted on following Jack wherever he went. Smokey, as always, kept a silent watch by the door, his eyes never quite leaving the horizon. In the squad room, Deputy Carl Bishop poured a mug of coffee for Jack and started working with Samira Patel, the department's tech officer. Samira was in her late 20s, short and athletic, her dark hair cropped and streaked with blue, her face animated with restless energy. She wore a vintage NASA hoodie and could often be found with 3 screens open at once, her fingers flying across keyboards. Today, her expression was sharp with focus as she worked on extracting data from the cracked phone. While they waited, Lisa Carter stopped by to check on the dogs. She was visibly tired, her blonde ponytail limp and her scrub splattered, but her touch was gentle as she checked Axel's stitches and Tank's side. "They'll heal," she told Jack softly, "but keep them close. Dogs remember who hurts them, but they never forget who fights for them." Lisa stayed to help set up a quiet room for the trio, lining the floor with blankets and bowls of warm broth. While there, she studied Smokey more closely. Something about the gray dog's bearing, the way he braced at every sharp noise yet never broke his gaze, nagged at her. After some thought, she gently lifted his ear, looking for the faint tattooed numbers again. Her eyes widened. "Jack, you need to see this." The tattoo, barely visible, matched the K9 registry for Salt Lake City, Utah. She checked her phone, pulling up a missing dog report. K9 Smokey, 3 years old, male, gray sable, missing after a burglary, Salt Lake City Police Department, awarded for exceptional service. Lisa's voice trembled with anger and awe. He's not just a survivor. He's a hero who's been stolen, used, and nearly destroyed. Jack rested a hand on Smokey's back. Not anymore. Samira's voice broke through the reverie. I'm in! She tapped through the phone's files, finding a series of encrypted messages, GPS pins, and images. The data showed dozens of transfers between addresses across the state, each pin labeled with coded tags, some familiar from the animal import records Jack had found. There was a map, littered with red marks across Missouri and into Kansas. Warehouses, backwoods properties, rural rescues, all hiding something. More alarming were photos. Dogs in cages, fights in grimy barns, stacks of cash, guns, and, most chilling, bags of white powder and vials tucked inside hollowed-out dog collars. Jack called in state police and, with Carl and a few trusted colleagues, organized a task force. As the day brightened, unmarked vehicles moved out of Maplewood, converging on the biggest location, an old farm registered to SLV Rescue. State Trooper Kate McAllister, a tall, broad-shouldered woman with a buzz cut and a calm, deliberate voice, took lead at the farm. Kate had grown up in the Ozarks, joined the force after her father's dog was stolen in a rural theft ring, and never lost her passion for justice. Her handshake was rough but genuine, her manner efficient. Let's bring these dogs home, she told Jack. At the SLV property, the smell hit first wet fur, bleach, and the metallic tang of fear. The barn was large, faded red paint peeling, the double doors locked but weak. With a shout, the team forced their way in, guns raised, voices clear. Inside were row upon row of cages, pit bulls, shepherds, mixed breeds, all cowering or snarling, all bearing scars. Several cages bore tags from cities across the Midwest. In a corner, Axel stiffened, nose to the ground. He pulled away from Jack, growling softly, then started pawing at the loose floorboards behind the last row of cages. Kate joined Jack, and together they pried up the planks. The stench of chemicals grew stronger. Beneath, they found what looked like a makeshift laboratory. Plastic bins filled with packets of powder, boxes of syringes, and dozens of dog collars with false compartments. Samira, who had come along to assist, filmed everything for evidence. The find was huge proof not only of animal abuse, but of organized drug trafficking. As officers rounded up the handlers and began freeing the animals, a scrawny, jittery man with greasy brown hair tried to run. Trooper Kate caught him by the jacket. The man's name, it turned out, was Travis Hawkins, wanted for illegal gambling and animal cruelty in 3 states. Under questioning, Travis cracked. "It ain't just about fighting dogs," he sneered, sweat running down his temples. "We ship more product on 4 legs than FedEx does on wheels. Collars are lined with powder. We get paid double if the dog makes it across the state line." His admission turned the case from animal cruelty to federal narcotics. The rescue made headlines. Footage of officers carrying dogs out of the barn dogs blinking in the light, whimpering with hope. A few barking as if to announce their survival ran on every local and national news network. Lisa reunited several dogs with their original handlers. One golden retriever, starved but alive, recognized a badge and licked it until everyone cried. Smokey, newly recognized as the hero of Salt Lake, was photographed standing tall by Jack's side, his fur still ragged but his dignity returned. That evening, back in Maplewood, Jack and Carl reviewed the evidence. "This started with 3 abandoned dogs on the tracks," Carl mused. "How many more are out there?" Jack answered quietly. "We save who we can, and we never stop looking." As the dogs rested at his feet, Axel's head on Jack's boot, Tank and Smokey pressed close, Jack allowed himself the first real exhale in weeks. But he knew the fight was far from over. Somewhere, beyond Maplewood, darker things still waited to be found. By the following week, Maplewood was no longer just a small Missouri town with a train track and a good-hearted cop. News crews gathered outside the police station, and more than a dozen officers from neighboring counties had set up a command post in the conference room. Federal agents had arrived, 3 from the FBI's St. Louis field office, led by Special Agent Maria Valdez, a composed, broad-shouldered woman in her early 40s with a decisive stride and an air of no-nonsense efficiency. Maria had sharp brown eyes, olive skin, and wore her dark hair in a simple bun. She rarely smiled, but her handshake was warm, and she listened more than she spoke. Her team included an older, bookish analyst named Gary Owens, whose wire-rimmed glasses always seemed about to slide off his nose, and a young, lean field agent, Eli Porter, whose boyish face and quick mind belied an impressive record of cybercrime busts. Jack, still carrying a few bruises and with Axel limping by his side, gave the feds a briefing, joined by Lisa Carter and Raymond Parker. Lisa, as always, kept a notebook of careful observations. Every dog's injury, every clue about their past, while Raymond, hair sticking up and a camera always around his neck, became an unofficial documentarian for the task force. As the FBI team mapped the web of addresses from the cracked phone, they found dozens of properties stretching into Oklahoma and Kansas. Many were listed as rescues, shelters, or dog boarding businesses. Maria Valdez nodded gravely. It's bigger than dog fighting. It's racketeering, trafficking. These dogs are being moved, laundered, and sold across state lines. With federal resources, the team moved fast. In a series of coordinated raids, Jack and Agent Porter led one squad into a rural barn in northern Missouri. The building, once a dairy operation, now stank of filth and fear. Dog shepherds, pit bulls, retrievers, even a few rare breeds cowered in stacked crates or barked furiously behind makeshift fencing. Some wore battered collars. Lisa and local volunteers worked quickly, moving from pen to pen, offering gentle words and food. At another property, Raymond worked with the FBI's technical team. While searching a pile of discarded electronics behind a fake repair shop, Smokey suddenly stopped, hackles up. The gray dog barked and began pawing at a battered desktop tower sticking out of an old refrigerator. Maria raised an eyebrow and signaled the techs over. Inside, they found a custom server, carefully shielded, packed with hard drives, and still faintly warm. Eli Porter grinned. That's our hub. The machine held a hidden trove, encrypted records of gambling payouts, fight schedules, supply orders, and lists of buyers. The real shock was the evidence of camera feeds, more than 50 addresses with video logs, all routed through a single encrypted network. Raymond, amazed, said, "They've been watching their own crimes and maybe even monitoring us." The techs began months of data recovery work. Amid the chaos of rescues, a moment of quiet joy broke through. In a staging area, a tall, gaunt man in his early 50s, with a badge on his belt and grief in his face, dropped to his knees in front of Tank. The sable shepherd, usually so aloof, froze, then let out a single, keening whine before launching himself at the man, nearly knocking him over. The man, Detective Aaron Clay from Houston PD, hugged Tank fiercely, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I thought I'd lost you for good, partner." Lisa watched, blinking back tears herself. Tank, who had survived so much, wagged his tail with a vigor Jack hadn't seen before. Jack and Lisa, exhausted but proud, attended the town's emergency council meeting. The town hall was packed, neighbors, animal advocates, and the newly famous Maplewood dogs. At the front, Mayor Connie Marsh presided. Dressed in a crisp blue suit, her silver hair perfectly set, Connie had mastered the balance between heartfelt conviction and political theater. She spoke movingly about the courage of Jack and the team, the heroism of the dogs, and Maplewood's new reputation as a town of compassion and justice. She unveiled a plaque to honor the canine heroes and their rescuers, her words drawing a standing ovation. But as she closed, Connie winked at the cameras, reminding everyone that a vote for strong leadership meant a vote for a safer Maplewood 2 and four-legged citizens alike. The crowd laughed. Even Jack grinned. Raymond caught the moment for his documentary, capturing not just the pride but the hope. As the meeting wound down, Smokey trotted to Jack's side. Maria Valdez stepped up, shaking Jack's hand. "You and your team just broke one of the largest illegal animal trafficking rings in the Midwest." Jack, humbled, simply replied, "We couldn't have done it without the dogs." The FBI team lingered, discussing open cases and the leads uncovered by Smokey's find. Lisa made plans to help with the next wave of rescues. Outside, as night fell, Jack walked home past the news crews, the lights bright against the dark. For the first time in a long while, he felt the town was safer, and that the world, despite its darkness, still held places for hope and second chances. The first true spring rain swept through Maplewood on the day everything changed. Trees trembled with new leaves, the sidewalks shimmered in the gentle drizzle, and the whole town seemed to breathe easier now that the long, stormy winter was over. In the station's front office, Jack Holden stood by the window, sipping coffee as the world outside gleamed with the hope of something fresh. He looked different now, older maybe, but lighter, with a steadiness in his blue eyes that had been missing for years. Gone was the guarded loneliness. In its place was a quiet confidence, the look of a man who had finally come home to himself. The headlines had long since moved on, but in Maplewood, the memory of the dog rescues and the takedown of the illegal rings lingered like legend. People came from nearby towns and distant states to adopt or volunteer. The dogs that had survived, the scarred, the shy, the stubborn, were now part of the community's rhythm, seen on morning walks, at the park, or peering hopefully out of windows along Main Street. But none of them were as celebrated as the three that started it all. Axel, the battered black and tan who'd fought off darkness with every last ounce of loyalty. Tank, the gentle giant whose bark now boomed only in joy. And Smokey, the gray canine with amber eyes, still cautious but carrying the dignity of a hero. After the federal investigation closed, happy endings became reality. Tank, his wounds healed and his spirit strong, was driven south by his old handler, Detective Aaron Clay. The reunion had been filmed by Raymond and broadcast statewide, Tank leaping into Aaron's arms, the two of them weeping on the grass as if no one else existed. Aaron, a tall man with weathered skin and a big, awkward grin, promised to give Tank the retirement he deserved, a life of comfort, open fields, and warm beds. As for Smokey, the Salt Lake City team drove all the way to Maplewood, bringing with them an entire squad of officers and 2 TV stations. Smokey greeted his original partner, a soft-spoken, sturdy woman named Detective Nina Alvarez, whose black braid and gentle Spanish accent reminded Jack of sunlit mornings in the desert, with a wagging tail and a hesitant, hopeful bark. Nina knelt, pressed her forehead to Smokey's, and whispered, "Bienvenido a casa, compañero." The town cheered as Smokey, once lost, now returned to his badge and his true calling. But for Axel, there was no home to return to. He had no chip, no records, no old friends waiting on a doorstep. He had Jack. They found their routine together, early walks before sunrise, quiet evenings by the fire, and patrols where Axel seemed to anticipate trouble before it started. The scars on Axel's side faded, but the one on his heart healed slowest. Some nights he would wake, trembling, until Jack's hand on his head grounded him. And Jack, who had spent years building walls around his own pain, found in Axel a partner, a friend whose loyalty was simple and fierce, who needed no words to understand when a man was trying to start over. The adoption papers were signed at the courthouse on a clear April morning. Judge Betty Rollins, a plump, twinkle-eyed woman known for her love of lemon bars and tough sentences, had everyone in tears when she declared, "It's official. You two are family now." The town celebrated with cake and banners, and for the first time in decades, Jack let himself believe in new beginnings. Raymond Parker, ever the documentarian, didn't let the story end there. Inspired by what he'd seen, he built a blog, Miracles in Maplewood, to share not only the saga of the rescue but the ongoing stories of every animal saved, every child who learned compassion, every community that found hope. The blog went viral, sparking a wave of donations that helped struggling shelters all over the state. Raymond, shy, quick-witted, often more comfortable behind a camera than in front of a crowd, was stunned by the response. He found himself invited to schools and libraries to talk about kindness, second chances, and the strange, wonderful magic of a small town that wouldn't give up. Lisa Carter, energized by the changes, pitched Jack an idea over coffee at Betty's Diner One booth away from where they'd first debated animal rescue laws. She wanted to create a club, One Home, One Hope, for Maplewood's children, a safe place where kids could learn to care for animals, practice empathy, and pick up life skills alongside four-legged friends. Jack jumped at the chance. With the city's blessing, they started weekly meetings at the community center, drawing kids from every corner of town. Lisa, patient but firm, led workshops on first aid and dog safety. Jack, more comfortable with action than talk, taught the kids about trust, teamwork, and bravery. Axel became the club's unofficial mascot, stoic and gentle, letting tiny hands pet his ears or lean against his sturdy side when someone needed courage. The club became a haven for shy kids, a training ground for future volunteers, and a reminder that healing is possible for everyone, no matter how rough the start. At the club's spring fair held in the wide, muddy park behind the town hall, the whole town turned out. There were hot dogs, lemonade, banners painted by children, and dogs of every shape running through obstacle courses. Axel lay in the shade beside Jack, his eyes content as he watched the joy around him. Lisa handed out ribbons for Best Rescue Smile and Bravest Comeback. Raymond filmed the event, capturing laughter and hugs and 100 small acts of kindness. The day's most unforgettable moment came late in the afternoon. A frantic mother, tears streaming, searched the crowd for her little daughter, a dark-haired girl named Ellie, age 6, who'd wandered away from the picnic tables. As volunteers called her name, Smokey, visiting from Salt Lake for the celebration, pricked up his ears. His whole posture changed, alert and focused. Without a word, he trotted through the maze of booths and children, nose low to the ground. Within minutes, Smokey barked sharply beside the library steps. There, behind a stack of hay bales, Ellie sat hugging her knees, scared but unharmed. Smokey pressed his nose to her hand, and Ellie giggled through her tears as he guided her back to her mother. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Detective Alvarez, with tears in her eyes, declared, "A hero's work is never done." That evening, as the sun set over Maplewood, Jack watched the club members and their dogs run in the fading light. The town was different now, softer, braver, and kinder. Axel sat beside him, head high, as if he knew that both of them had finally found a place where they belonged. Lisa, Raymond, Smokey, and the whole community gathered to watch the sky blush gold and violet. It was not just the end of a long ordeal, but the start of something new. A future built not on fear or scars, but on trust, second chances, and a love that demanded to be shared. In the end, the greatest miracles are not always the thunderous ones that shake the earth, but the quiet moments of kindness, courage, and second chances that change the course of a single life, or even a town. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was the gentle hand of God guiding Officer Jack, Axel, Tank, Smokey, and everyone in Maplewood to cross paths at just the right time. We are reminded that hope can spring from the darkest places, that redemption is always possible, and that love given freely and fiercely can heal wounds we thought would last forever. So if you believe in miracles, in the goodness of strangers, and in the power of compassion, remember, sometimes God sends his angels in the form of a friend, a neighbor, or even a loyal dog. In our daily lives, let us look for the small blessings, show mercy, and open our hearts to those in need. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us where you are watching from, and if you believe in the power of prayer and second chances, type Amen in the comments to let the world know that faith is alive and well. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that will warm your heart and restore your faith in miracles. May God bless you and everyone you love.